Today on the show, we have Janet Siddiqui, current Howard County Board of Education member and candidate for Howard County Board of Education in 2016. Welcome to the show, Janet.
Hi, Scott. Thanks for inviting me.
For those that don't remember, Janet received over 24,000 votes, finishing fourth of the 11 candidates during the primary. So congratulations on the successful primary campaign.
Thank you so much.
Since we were unable to connect during the primary for an interview, I wanted to give you an opportunity to let my listeners know a little bit more about you. So would you just tell them a little bit about yourself, your background, and why you're running for re-election for Board of Education?
Sure. I've lived in Howard County over 30 years with my husband and 3 children, and all my kids went through Howard County Public Schools, and all 3 of them graduated from Appleton High School. I've been a pediatrician with Johns Hopkins Community Physicians for over 22 years, and I've been on the board since 2007. And, some of the reasons that I got on the board, because a lot of people were telling me we could really use the perspective of a pediatrician on the board. And so over the years, my focus has always been, at 3 different levels. Number one being the education of our children, and and my primary goal has always been eliminating achievement gaps, making sure that our teachers and our students have all the resources that they need to address those issues. Second has always been the health and safety of our children. I was on the original anti-bullying committee before I came on the board, and helped establish that policy. And bullying continues to be an issue in our schools, and we have issues with social media safety. And a group of us championed the wellness policy. I worked with Pat and Horizon Foundation on bringing forth a great wellness policy to the community, and just making sure our kids are in a safe, optimal environment for being ready to learn. And then also the future, of our children is so important to ourselves as a community, in terms of the opportunities for our students to become great citizens and give back to the community. And there's, the world has expanded for our students, and there's world-class opportunities, and we want them to be, ideal citizens of tomorrow. So having a vision in place in terms of where we need to go with our children in the future is really important to me.
Great. Well, thanks for that. So it's candidate forum season. There have been a couple of forums already, and there was one last night. The League of Women Voters had a forum last night. How'd that go for you?
I think it went really well. It seemed shorter than what we had in the past. I didn't think that we had as many questions as other forums that I participated with the League in the past, but they're always so generous in terms of, really letting us have an opportunity to, share some of our ideas, and the fact that they, have the opportunity to replay that again on the TV stations and on their website. That's great.
Yeah, and so there's another forum tonight, the PAC Forum, or the People Acting Together in Howard Forum. You'll be at that one tonight?
Yes, I will. Yep.
Great. For the listeners, the forum's at 7 p.m. at St. John's Baptist Church in Columbia, Maryland. Yes, that is my little commercial for that forum. Excuse me. Okay, you ready to play 3 questions for the candidate?
Sure.
All right. Question 1. I'm going to ask you a question that I've asked a couple of other candidates because you're a sitting Board of Education member. I want your kind of take on this, and that's Hogan's executive order of starting schools after Labor Day. And it's really a 2-part question. Number 1 is your feeling on the use of an executive order for this. And secondly is your feeling on starting school after Labor Day here in Howard County.
Oh, sure. There's, question whether the executive order is legal, whether he has the authority over the local boards or even the state superintendent and the state board of education. I don't think it was necessarily the right thing to do. because I'm certainly a supporter of local control and local authority, especially when it has to do with our school calendar. What works good for one community or county may not work good for another county. It will really have an impact on our school calendar. It's from after Labor Day, which could vary when that starts, until June 15th. So we would really have to either cut into spring break or eliminate some of our professional development days. It's cutting at least a week. It'll give us more time for school construction. But it really impacts the calendar, the school year calendar, and I think that should really be a local decision.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. The executive order was kind of odd. I like the starting after Labor Day, but that's just me. But I'm a senior in high school, and it's not after this year. I'm not going to follow it as closely.
I think a lot of us grew up that way. I grew up in New York State, and it was after Labor Day start. But we're, in some regards, in some models, we're looking at, like Yearround School, and is that a good model? When I talked about putting an extra week, another week on the summer break, you're talking about students that sometimes those longer breaks really impact their learning retention, so that's a concern.
Sure. Absolutely. I get that too. All right, so that's question one. Let's move on to question two. This was a user-submitted question, but I'm rephrasing it to ask you the way I've asked other candidates. Recently, or about a little over a month ago, in the Baltimore Sun, there was an article that says Howard County schools test high for mold, but questions still remain. And this has to do with the report of the 12 schools, including Glenelg Middle School, and I'm sure you're very familiar with this report. And the article goes on to say that the levels of mold spores were higher than expected based on industry standard practices, but it goes on to say that the report was pretty confusing. I guess my question for you was, what are your thoughts about the report? What's happened since the report, and what do you think the level or the concern parents should be about mold in our school system?
Sure, I'd love to talk about this because it's really confusing not only for people in the community, it's confusing for people in the scientific community because there's really no established standards for safe indoor mold levels or for levels that impart health risks. And most of the time, the spores indoors are usually evaded from outdoor spaces. So it could come in from open windows, heating air conditioning units that pull air from the outside, which was the case in Glenwood Middle. Sometimes it just comes in transfer of clothing, and then of course we know the conditions of humidity and temperature, also play a role. Certainly there's and the concerns in terms of concerns to an individual's health certainly has to be looked at in terms of the only of allergies. So, certainly, parents should talk with their child's pediatrician. If they're having any, symptoms in terms of allergy symptoms, and really maybe be tested in terms of, tested for molds. That's the biggest concern. And if there is, concerns, we want parents to tell the school nurse so we can, track this information. I think the Indoor Air Quality Committee and the recommendations and where we're going with this, that is outstanding because, making sure our humidity levels are low because not only there's other things that humidity levels can promote dust mite proliferation. So student that has allergy to dust could be affected. So we want to know what's going on in the schools. We want to monitor it. We're acting and treating or addressing issues as quickly as possible now, and just want to communicate and want people to communicate with us as well as try and get information back. But so that's where we are right now.
Okay. Does the superintendent, given the issue, I mean, it's been written about, there's Facebook groups about it, I've read about it numerous times, and this is just a question from me. Does the superintendent or the school system report regularly to the board on what's going on with this issue? Since this came about in the past year, whenever there's a concern of a report of mold now, the board gets an email. In the past, we would just, probably hear it about hearsay, if we happen to be in a school, visiting that day, and they say, oh, well, we're addressing this issue, or, but now it's being communicated more effectively to the board, so that's a good thing. But there's not like a regular report that comes out? On a regular basis, no, just if incidents come up. Okay. Okay, that's all I've got for that question. We'll move on to question 3.
Can I add one? Can I add one more thing?
Absolutely. Please go ahead.
Sure. I think the indoor air quality, not just for the mold issue, but there's other. We did put in some guidelines a few years ago regarding for new construction in terms of making sure building materials, were safe, and then also, over the years we've switched to better cleaning supplies and to make sure that we're using the best products out there in terms of keeping our students safe.
Well, that's good. Okay. So my third and final question on 3 questions for the candidates was submitted by a follower or listener, Neil. And he had a question about your future aspirations in local politics. This has going back to 2014 when you were on the ballot for state delegate. And his question is, if reelected to the board, do you plan to seek higher office in 2018 with the number of potential or number of actual open seats, or remain on the board for the entire 4-year term?
No, I have no intention right now of the office I'm seeking right now is the Board of Education, and one of the reasons that I didn't seek, move forward with the delegate seat was because at the last minute I saw concern for the board because right before the filing deadline, Brian Meshkin was already had left or was on his way out, and then Frank Aquino had at the very last minute before the filing deadline, I found out that he wasn't going to run. So I was concerned about the turnover on the board, and since it was in the middle of my term, I felt obligated to, finish out my term on the Board of Education. So that's how that transpired. But I'm committed. I've been committed, the past 9 years, and I'll continue to be committed to the people of Howard County. I'm very grateful to have this opportunity to serve people on the people and citizens of Howard County on the board.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for playing 3 questions for the candidate. Janet, where can listeners learn more about your campaign?
They can email, or my website is janetsiddiqui.com, and my email address is janet@janetsiddiqui.com. They can call me. My campaign phone number is 443-535-8662. And any of those ways, they can contact me. Great. Well, thank you for joining me today. Hopefully I'll run into you at one of these upcoming forums. I will make one of them one of these days to be able to chat face-to-face with all of you again. And I'd love to have you back on the show if there's an opportunity between now and November to play 3 questions for the candidate again. Sure. Thank you so much. Great. Well, have a wonderful afternoon. You too. Bye-bye. Bye.